Okay, and hello everybody. All two of you, including me, twice probably. Anyway, I don't usually do these kind of things. This is a quick first look. I work mostly for print media, and we pride on being slow and methodical. But I have such interesting hardware down here which you obviously can't see. Nice video, by the way. Uh, and I'm one of the few people who actually have one, and when I was looking at it on Discord and on the internet, I had several questions I was wondering about. So I thought I'd answer those questions for you, all of you who are still wondering the same things. Now, I only just got this working and I don't know that much about it. I haven't had the time to test. So keep that in mind, but like I said, this is first impressions, so let's go. Now the first question I had in my mind, having used the Microsoft Sidewinder force feedback 20 years ago, was can you feel the mechanism working? Because I mean, we are looking at very strong engines and belt drives and gears and whatever. And one would wonder that you should be able to feel that, like clunkiness of it. Now, that's actually a very simple answer to a simple question, so let's make it more complicated to drive home an important point. First of all, there's a red panic button down here. And okay, from now on I'm going to have a very hard time taking seriously any controllers that don't have red panic buttons on them. But I'm going to press that button to prove that point and show how this thing actually works. So there we go, now I pressed the button. Now this is completely powered off. Now it can't do the whack fuck thing for you, accidentally or on purpose, and it's safe. And the question was, can you feel the cogs and the belt drives and the motors running? And right now the answer is resoundingly yes. And I can feel even through this kind of leverage that there are some very powerful motors at work in there. And you can probably see what it feels like. It feels that clearly. Just pushing the stick around, you can see it hopping over the engine or the motor things. This is what I was kind of slightly afraid of or wondering about. And yes, right now I can feel every bit of the motors working against me. However, like I said, I wanted to do this to prove a point or showcase something really important, because when we are talking about this VPForce Rhino or any other force feedback thing, there are at least three layers at work. There's the hardware down there, the VPForce Rhino. Then there's the Rhino software, and then there's the game. And all of these affect the experience very profoundly. And right now, pretty much only the VPForce Rhino is at work. And like I said, it feels kind of clunky on its own. However, the VPForce software does some black magic or rainbow colored magic or whatever. And it is quite magical. So let's unclick the red panic button. Okay, so now the VPForce software is doing its magic on a most basic level. It's like most joystick software. It has a lot of really cool options in it, and you can choose to enable, disable and whatever. But one of the things that it does is called anti-cogging, which is designed to exactly alleviate the problem I just showcased. And now that it's simply powered on, from the moment I unclick that panic button, the whole thing becomes really smooth. And now you can't see any problems here, I'm pretty sure, because there kind of aren't. The anti-cogging is doing its thing. And now it's really smooth. It's assisting the movement across the motor boundaries. And the question was, can you feel the motors and the belts and the cogwheels running? Well, yeah, I'd like to say that I have such a good sensation in my arm. I've used a lot of joysticks in my life. And the answer is kind of maybe. If I really dig into it, feel really carefully, maybe I can still find those boundaries somewhere. But for all practical purposes, the answer is you don't need to worry about that. It's very smooth. I have never used a joystick that didn't give you some kind of feel about the mechanism underneath. And this is not an exception, but it's really smooth. So the answer to the first question is, can you feel the cogs, wheels, belts and so on? It's quite simply, no, not really. Not to an extent you need to worry about at all. So I actually answered the first question, which is kind of weird, because yeah, I usually am not that concise. So let's fix that. Now the next obvious question is how strong it is. Well, right now it's not. As you can see, just laying on the surface of the runway, yeah, no, it's not doing anything actually, except for anti-cogging and other black magic. So it's not very strong at the moment, so I can't answer that right now. Well, of course I have tested it before, so I can tell you that it's comparable to all the other sticks I have tested, the strongest ones of them. Now you have to understand that one of the things about this is that it basically comes with an extension built in. This is the Virpil stick, the mongoose or whatever they call it. But this base can basically take pretty much any stick you have, Thrustmaster and Virpil natively, and VKB and Winwing with an adapter. I think the Winwing is still in beta or something. But fundamentally you can use whatever grip you want. And this Virpil grip is actually very light, and I'm currently testing with this. I have also tested the VKB, and it's a little bit different feel, but anyway, this is what we have right now, so this is what we're getting right now. And anyway, the question was how strong is this stick, and you have to, like I said, you have to take into account the built-in extension, so I have a lot of leverage here. And this is pretty similar system without any extra extensions that I used previously when I tested the VKB, Virpil and Winwing bases. And yeah, this is pretty much as strong as any of those at their maximum. And if you're like me and you prefer the space cams to avia cams because they have a more linear response, then this is much stronger than any of those, because those space cams have a really low level of strength in their response. And pretty much the only thing that compares to me just by quick feel is the VKB avia cam at maximum springs. And that only compares at the very edges, which is why I actually don't like the VKB very much. Because, or the avia cams, the space cams are fine. Because the VKB avia cam has such an incredible steep curve at the very edges that you almost feel that you've pulled the maximum when you reach that curved part. But then you get a lot of strength and you can pull all of it. And I think that's the only thing that matches the Rhino but in strength. So this is quite strong. It's never going to give you that 200 kilos of pulling with two arms and standing on the pedals kind of feel. No, but it's strong enough, let's say it like that. The only thing where I might want some more strength is actually the end stops. Uh, this has something like 22 degrees of movement, which is quite a lot, especially for me in here. But it also has adjustable end stops, so you can have as much or as little movement as you want. Of course, at the end stops, it can only stop you at the maximum force. And for that kind of end stop use, like here I'm using a little bit of end stop, for that I might want a little bit more, but hey, that's actually not a huge deal. So the answer to the strength question is, it's enough. If you are using something like a 20 cm VKB extension, first of all you have a ridiculously long stick. Look for pictures on the internet, you have the measurements of the VPForce Rhino on Valmis's website or the Discord. You will notice that this is a huge device, it's gigantic compared to anything else. And it's very tall at minimum. So if you add something like a 20 cm extension, you have so much leverage that I don't know how it's going to feel like. But I bet it's going to be pretty much better than anything else I've tested under similar circumstances. So the second answer to the question how strong it is, I'd say it's strong enough for any purpose I'm going to need it for. It feels quite nice, and I probably won't use the 100% strength all the time. So the third question, and that's the really big one. All of these are kind of game breakers so far. Because if the feel isn't nice, if I can feel the motors and the cogs, I don't want to use this, but that's not a problem. Now if it's not strong enough, it's not usable, not nice, but that's not a problem. So that's like check 2 boxes. No problems there. Now the third question is, can this thing actually uphold that kind of strength long enough to be actually usable in game? How much strength can you take out of it and still fly a mission without the thing shutting down? Well, with a little bit of testing, trying out different things, I can convincingly tell you right now that I have no idea. I don't know. I have flown not for extended periods of time, something like 20 minutes at most, and I haven't done any real stress testing, and I haven't gotten any problems out of it yet. I have got fans rolling really hard, and they are kind of loud and obnoxious, but what can you do? I kind of prefer having those fans cooling down the motors and keeping the thing running rather than shutting down. So the fans kind of, yeah, they are small, they run fast, and they are not great, but they do their job so far, and I'm glad it has them. Yeah, it's kind of a small minus all that noise, but not a big deal for me so far. The big deal, of course, is if this thing can't hold on enough power for extended periods of time so that you can fly actual missions without your joystick shutting down, and I don't know. I haven't heard of that kind of problems, but that remains to be seen. I can't answer that question yet. So the fourth big question is, how does it actually feel? A good question, very simple one, thank you for asking. Yeah, that's going to be complicated, so let's get started. First of all, like I said, I have never tested a joystick where the mechanism didn't give you some kind of feel about its existence, and this is no different. And also note that I gave you an example of the VPForce Rhino software doing black or rainbow magic, and I don't really know all the things it's doing right now. I'm not familiar with the settings, so take this with a grain of salt. This is the first impressions. But as you can see, it's not like free flopping. So there is some resistance. There's like a leather or false leather boot, and then there's the motors, there's the gears and the pulleys or belts, and it gives you a smooth like resistance feel all throughout. And it's not sticky. I have to emphasize that it's not sticky like in the least. So don't worry about that. There's kind of this smooth resistance feel when the game stick is very limp and it's not giving feedback. And with this light wheel stick, it kind of sticks to the position where it is. But remember, there's no stiction. So that's one of the things in the stick's feel. I'll get back to that later, so hold that thought. So, if you have never used force feedback, all of this might be kind of new to you and quite surprising, so let's get actually going and power up the plane. So the first thing you notice, well, it's not doing much. I'm running like minimal RPM right now. There's not much airflow, so this is limp in every direction. And Sturmovik is one of the games that has pretty good support for force feedback, so let's see. I'm going to start increasing the throttle a little bit by bit. You can hear the engine powering up, and you can see the stick doing its thing already. Now there's already some resistance. Of course nothing in the ailerons because they are not in the prop wash. Let's give it some more beams. And basically the important thing here is that my controller right here is doing the exact same thing the controller in the cockpit is doing. And by the way, one thing I noticed is that when I take the throttle off and the stick starts going limp, as you can see, I think that in a plane like this it should actually prefer going forward sheerly because of the weight of the elevator. Surely it must prefer to droop down like this and not go backwards at all. And this is quite neutral, and this is not the problem of the Rhino. This is purely from the game. It's actually not a big problem, but something I noticed, and actually a friend of mine who flies planes also noticed that. So let's give it a little bit more throttle. Notice the stick activating again. And again, this is not going to change the game completely unless you are like me and you're looking for the authentic experience, in which case this already changes the game completely. Like, just this kind of feel, it's already, I'm not going to say it's worth the price because it's a lot, but I'm already in 7th heaven because of this. And this is something I've been looking for from my controller, and now I'm getting it, so I'm kind of happy with it so far. So let's get going. Anyway, I can't give this much more throttle without the plane starting off, so let's go. Let's see how this works. Now I'm getting some bounciness from the surface. It's actually getting less and less, perhaps because the game feels that there's less weight on the wheels. Positive climb, gears up. And we're moving.
Leader, airborne, over, route, proceed with your mission.
we have some airspeed, so let's cut off the throttle. And as you can notice, the plane is kind of out of trim right now. I'm having to push against the airflow, and yes, it really kind of feels like pushing against an airflow. So let's try the trim thing also, because that's also one of the strong points of force feedback. So this plane is equipped with trim tabs, like quite a lot of general aviation planes. So this behavior is familiar to many people who have flown those. I'm now going to give this a little bit of down trim. Okay. So now it's stuck there, and I'm having to give it pretty much no force to keep it straight, so the plane is trimmed out pretty well. And then again, this is probably not going to help you shoot down all those enemy planes in every game, but for me this is already quite amazing and really fantastic. A little bit more trim as we get more airspeed. And I'm kind of speechless here, because this is exactly what I've been looking for from the stick for the longest time, and it's now here. So I'm quite happy with this. And again, this is just initial impressions. But so far, yeah, it's quite amazing. And one thing you notice is that it actually saturates quite quickly in the strength department. So this is kind of already giving me full strength at not full speed, but it's okay. I don't mind not having that 200 kilos of pull at maximum. So let's try something else for a while. Let's give it the beans a little bit more. I can feel a little bit of wobble at the edges. I have something like 50% of the what they call, I don't know, special effects or something. Like what I'm feeling now is the airflow, but then when I approach stall, there is some buffeting, which is a special effect and not directly calculated by the physics. Of course, it's coming straight from the game, and it's very useful, and I kind of like that too. So let's try that again. Okay, now it's going limp and wobbling a bit, and there we go. So it gives you a little bit of warning earlier than what you can tell by just looking at the screen. And that's already a competitive advantage, so points for force feedback. So let's try another kind of stall. Power off and nose up. And here I can feel the effect of the airflow lessening and lessening. The stick is quite limp already. And the nose drops. Now we accelerate and regain control, and I can now feel the stick going stiffer and stiffer. And if that's not exactly what you want from your controller, then there's something wrong with you. Sorry. Of course there are other effects, like for example firing your guns produces some kind of wobble on the stick. And you can of course adjust the effects. You can probably take them off completely in most games, and you can adjust the strength. and the relative strength of the spring forces, or not spring forces, and the effects. And when I mentioned that there are three factors, like the hardware and the Rhino software and the game software, the hardware is so far quite amazing, and the Rhino software is impressive, and it's constantly developing further. But then there's the question of game software. Yeah, that's one of the big questions. And IL-2 Sturmevik is one of the best I have seen. DCS World is kind of mixed bag, it depends completely on the module. And Flight Simulator is kind of surprised because it's so good with export normally. And it just doesn't give anything natively, you have to buy separate software, but after you get that, it depends on per plane basis. So it's kind of spotty at best, unfortunately. But the Rhino is something like a year or less old at the moment, and there are a couple of dozen Rhinos out there. So maybe it's going to be a game changer. I can't guarantee that, but I can only hope. Because and I really hope somebody send some of these to the 777 Studios and Eagle Dynamics and Asobo and the likes. Because if their people test this out, they might be kind of interested. And I told you earlier that I would get back to the feel question when I said that there's some resistance I feel, even when the game forces aren't running. So yeah, yes, there's some resistance, and it's coming from the mechanics, I believe. Oh, by the way, there's some black magic going on in there also. The developer says that one of the options in there is like power steering, where the joystick tries to assist you when it thinks that you want to move left or right or forward back. It tries to assist you in doing that, kind of overcoming the resistance of the mechanism. Well, you can probably guess how interesting results that can have. But yeah, there's black magic involved, and that can also change. But the main point with that is I really don't mind the resistance, because well, when I look in there I'm thinking about all kind of pulleys and gears and all kind of stuff resisting your movement, and when I move the Rhino, all I can think of is, yeah, that's pretty much what it's supposed to feel like. And furthermore, so far, even having not tested this for a very long time, I hesitate to say this, but so far, yeah, I really just feel like this is the best feeling gimbal I've ever had, bar none. Even if you discount all the forces, all the effects, you just take the gimbal and what it feels like to use. Yeah, for me this is just the best so far of all of these. I have tried VKB Whirlpool, but the latest generation, and also the Winwings previous generation, and nothing with springs and cams comes even close to this, even without the forces. Like the somewhat heavy feel of the resistance I mentioned, it just helps you feel like you are fighting air forces and not springs, and that's exactly what I want. This is like heavy without feeling heavy. It has resistance without feeling sticky. And yeah, it just feels like you are in a plane. And I have tried the dry clutches on VKB and Winwing, and they never gave me this kind of solid, crisp feel without bounciness. They never did that. But what they did was always introduce some amount of stiction. And I really hate the stiction because it prevents you from doing the really small movements comfortably like this. And even then it didn't give me this kind of solid feel of fighting against airflow instead of spin. So however, do keep in mind this is just very quick test. And I hesitate to say something as strong as that at this stage of testing, but yeah, I just have to say that so far this is missing nothing in terms of feel. Take the force feedback out of the loop entirely and this is the best stick base I have ever used. So how does it feel like? Well, yeah, I guess there's your answer. Even without the forces, this is the best one I've ever seen. And other than that, how does it feel is very complicated, but I'm not going to say it feels perfect at this stage of testing, but there I just said it. So what's left is basically the big question. Can it provide enough strength for long enough time for it to be actually usable in, let's say, a military environment? Like right now, the fans are not even running, because this is a trimmed out plane and I'm not asking a lot of it. But an extended dogfight is an entirely different matter, so I don't know. And one thing is, of course, very important point about this stick is that it's extremely adjustable. Like the other sticks or the bases I've tested, they also have a lot of adjustment. My fingers are still bleeding from trying to adjust and testing them out. But for this stick, you just move some sliders in software and it turns completely different, just like that. That's like incredibly fantastic advantage, even if you take all the force feedback out of the loop. That's already a huge deal in itself. Now to be honest, I don't like how this video turned out, because I used too strong words there without having tested this properly. So I want to emphasize again that this was totally just a quick first look. So take everything with a huge pile of salt grains. Is that what the English people say? Or the Americans who can tell the difference? But the initial impressions are incredible, absolutely incredible, and all the questions except for that one have been thoroughly answered, and all the answers are resoundingly yes, it works brilliantly. Now, I'm not even going to go into is it worth the price, because that depends entirely. For the vast majority of people on the earth, no, they wouldn't know what to do with this thing. And for some people it's a no-brainer, they just pick it up and enjoy it, and for the rest of us, yeah, it's expensive, sure. But so is everything else nowadays, and yeah, it depends. I don't have enough experience with this to say anything conclusive, and I don't know how much money you have to spend, so I don't know. So all I can say is that the first impressions are incredibly positive all the way through. So that's pretty much it. A pretty long-winded way of saying much in terms of nothing. Oh my god, I love these forces. Now the plane's slightly buffeting because the flaps and gears are out. I'm not sure I've landed this plane ever before, so I'm going to cut this video early. But yeah, I said everything I want to say, and words are never going to describe what this feels like, but I hope I helped you out a little bit, because this is kind of what I wanted to hear or see when I was thinking about getting the Rhino. For me, oh my god, this stick is telling me so much right now, like how little force there's going on. And I'm going to outrun the airfield, but that doesn't really matter. Wow, holy shit, man. Can I stop this in time? Oh. Do I survive? I think I survive. And as you can see, now the stick is limp. So, I'm going to end this here now, with a positive ending where I actually didn't crash the plane on landing. But I hope I answered some open questions you might have about the Rhino. And for more questions answered in a much more thorough way, you probably have to learn Finnish and buy a magazine, so maybe write to some of you later. Bye bye.